Okay, I'll be blunt. I'm not going to read off a script, or I'm not too good with just talking. So I'm going to pause a lot while talking here, but I wanted to make a video while it's late at night and I'm on my walk and I'm out here in a park. So you may hear some background noise. That's just nature. So I wanted to talk about my experience as starting out and trying to get into game development and trying to become a good developer. Not necessarily being financially good, just good enough to my own standards. And I'm one of those people where everything I make I don't like. So it's any artistic field is just horrible for me to get into for that reason alone, because I hate everything that I make. I always think I could do better. I always think there is something more to do. You know, to me, there's never an end, even though I want there to be an end. But the ending is just never good enough for me. And for the point that I'm in now, I've spent like 3, almost 4 years in actual trying to make games. I spent a couple years learning programming, and still I'm not even that good with it. I still struggle with fucking arrays and lists and all that. But that's kind of the point I want to get to, is this little recording here. I'm going to have actual visuals for the video, things you can actually look at while I do my talking here. I may have music playing over too. I probably will. But it'll be a lot quieter than this, so you can get the point through. And I'm a quiet talker. So when I first wanted to start getting into development, I didn't realize what it would take to actually get in there. I started out wanting to make music, and my style of music folded a lot towards ambiance instead of cinematic music, which is what I already wanted to get into. I already wanted to do cinematic music, but I just either didn't really have the tools, nor did I have the mental ability to make cinematic music, I suppose. And eventually I started straying away from actual composing and went back into music mixing, which takes like audio samples and sound bites and all that there, and compiled it all together to make a music track. That's what like half of my music is. And eventually I had the thought of, well, I can make music, but I'm not happy with the music that I make. So perhaps I should get into a different field. Now, mind you, I'm not one that likes drawing. I don't care for my art style. I have a specific art style when I draw. It's more like chicken scratch, doodle draw. I can't picture the image in my head as much as what other people can, and I know people say that's a skill that you just develop over time, which it is, and I just haven't spent the time to actually develop that skill. But that kind of leads into the dilemma of, I don't want to get into just making art, and I don't want to just be into music, but I was really into video games. My most favorite game ever was Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2. And I still play the game to this day, even though it's like over 10 years old now. And I kind of always had this dream goal of the game getting bigger, which it never did, because the developers had to move on and financial reasons, all that there. So I told myself, well, what if I could get into game development? What if I start making my own Garden Warfare 2? And did little young me not really realize what it would take to even get close to 1% of that dream. I eventually bought my first laptop. It was more meant for office work. It wasn't a gaming laptop or anything like that. It was generally a low-end laptop at the time, but it was the best I could afford for me working at McDonald's. That and I was still at school, so it was part-time, all that. Oh. Basically, within the first week of me having the laptop, because my parents didn't trust me having one, but it seems how I bought my own, they were fine with me having one. One day we didn't have school because of snow, I believe. So my parents were at work and I was awake. I don't know where my sister was. She may have been at a friend's house. But I spent the day trying to find me some type of outlet to make video games. Which is my first advice for anyone. Is whenever you're looking to make video games and you don't know where to start off at, do not jump straight into an engine. Don't just jump into Unity or Unreal unless you already know programming. Because I didn't know programming at the time. I myself didn't know, what code looked like. I didn't know how to write, how to read it. I didn't even know there's different code languages. And I tried a few different engines like GameMaker, and tried Unity, tried Godot. I think I even installed Unreal at one point. No, I never did do Unreal. I did do Unity though. And it took until like the third or fourth engine I realized, wait a second, I don't know how to program. Then I started searching up for an engine that didn't require coding. And eventually I came across an engine that I did like, that was called FlowLab. And that kind of led me into my next mistake, which was I didn't try to learn programming after I found FlowLab, because FlowLab was like visual diagrams that then turned into code. You yourself didn't have to actually write any program. You didn't have to understand how to read or write it. You just had to know the flow of it. And this was good enough for me at the time because I just wanted to make a game. But the engine became a new liability for me, because it was a 2D only engine. There wasn't 3D, and it'll be a while before there's ever a FlowLab 3D, just because there's no GPU support. It's browser based, all that stuff. That, and it was a subscription based engine, so you didn't own the engine whenever you bought it. You only bought like a month or a year's worth of subscription for it. But I stuck with it, and I started to learn as much of the flow of code, as much as the understanding of code, everything that I needed to know, without tutorials, which you yourself really should look up tutorials. It would have been a lot of good help for me to have like a teacher or someone there to actually sit there and explain programming to me. But no, I decided to go hammer to and try to figure out everything on my own. And I eventually got there. But you could tell within my early projects, I didn't understand frame data. I didn't understand ray casting collisions. Anything that you really need to be able to make something work. And so like every game of mine, for the first few games that I would make, and I would never publish those games. They were just test projects, as I like to put them. Just me seeing if I could make something. They all ran off frame data rather than time. So whenever you're trying to make a game, unless you intend to do it off of frame data, do not do things like your movements or physics or jumping or detection, any of that. Do not do it off of frame data. Instead, use some type of timing format like delta time and do every tenth of a second or whatnot, or even every 1 second. Granted, a lot slower than every 1 second, so like every tenth of a second works fine. And the reason you want to do that is because that then doesn't run off of however fast your CPU can run. It's instead off of however much time has passed. And it makes a big difference when jumping from device to device. And I didn't notice that until I started using the family computer as a second outlet to work on projects whenever I don't feel like using my laptop. And then whenever I finally got myself a new laptop that my dad bought me, it was a higher end gaming laptop. It was a lot faster. It had a lot more RAM, a lot more CPU power, everything else that you would need, a better GPU, everything. Yeah, so my mind's drawing a blank here. Whenever I moved from the old laptop to the new laptop, I was quickly aware that there was an issue with how the games I made would run whenever I went back to just test them again, to play them. The games ran a lot quicker, which meant a lot of things didn't work correctly. A lot of the physics wasn't accurate enough. The things that were meant to be hard jumps, you could do a lot easier now. The time it took you to run from one end of a map to another was a lot quicker. And it was noticeable that the experience depended on the device. So if you were to ever start making your own games, do not run off of frame data. Don't run off of an always function. Always run off of delta time. Like, that is one of the biggest things I wish I had learned ahead of time. Because there was a lot of these older projects I wanted to go back into and try to make into publishable titles just so I could get them out there. Even though they weren't the greatest, just set them off as free or for like 10 cents or something like that way. I could just get it out there and people can play it. But when I went back through and they were built off older versions of the engine, that was then upgraded to the newer versions of the engine. That and the whole everything ran off frame data. I learned very quickly it was a lot more work to fix those than to just make a new project, which sounds dumb, but me, in my mind, that's how that was. And eventually I am sorry, my mind stopped working again, which that's more of a health issue for me, is my mind just stopped working a lot. I'm starting to be very forgetful, a lot of delusions, a lot of forgetfulness, a lot of just cloudy vision, cloudy thoughts. I can sit there and think, but I can't express anything. And I'm only fucking 19, and I'm already losing myself. I can barely remember my younger years. But anyways, But no, I eventually came back and did a couple projects and released those. And I've come to learn that the engine that you use really affects what you can do with your projects. Because if you try going to different platforms like Xbox or Google, they have SDKs, which is software development kits, and those has to be imported into your files. Now, yes, you can import them into pretty much any zip file or APK file that you can. Sometimes it doesn't work well with the engine itself. I don't know why, but when asking about it in the community, that's the response that I got. Now, for Google Play, apparently games work well for Google Play. I personally could not get an account on Google Play, which, that's another thing too. A lot of places, a lot of distributors will not distribute your game if you're below 18 and you don't have a business license, in which certain states in the US, I know in particular, like my state in particular, a sole proprietary, you have to register that, pay a fee, all that there, before you can start legally making money that isn't from doing work for someone else. It's very fucked up because not every state requires that. I didn't know that at the time, and luckily I didn't make any money. I got no one checked out my stuff, so I didn't have to worry about taxes or anything like that, because guess what? Nobody liked my stuff. But once I started looking into that, I was like, oh fuck, I really should have looked into that when I was a lot younger. But now I got everything registered. So whenever you do decide to publish something, do check your legal laws for your area, whether your state, your country, whatever. Make sure you do everything right. You don't want to piss off the tax man. You really don't, unless you want to somehow find a way to work around all that. And then, I'm not going to say you should, but I'm just saying it's technically possible, I guess. It's hard to, though. So, but yeah, whenever you're picking out an engine to start making games, and let's just say hypothetically you've learned programming, you don't mind learning these engines and what all you need to do for them, you still need to look into what platforms they work well with, what their limitations are, because some engines have different limitations than others, and you need to lay out the bad and the good between each engine. Which that then comes to another issue that I think I should really recommend to any person. When starting out, it is good to use an engine, because then you don't have to program every single thing. Because that's the whole point of an engine, is so you don't have to do all the back end stuff. You work on the front end and like the semi front end, or semi back end rather, like the point between front, like the middle end, I guess is what you call it. But if you have this dream goal of making this big giant project, all these different features and endless opportunities and all that there, do not make it with a pre-made engine. Even if you're very comfortable with that engine, you go, oh, I can make anything with this engine. Make your own engine. Only if you know how to. There's different videos out there that will teach you how to make your own engines. There's AI that can help you make your own engines, all that there. But you gotta be able to understand that not every single dream project of yours can be done with a generic engine, because those generic engines are meant to be generic. Some may be for just platformers, some may be just for first-person shooters, all that. And not every engine, well, no engine, can actually do everything without some type of limitation in the back end that you yourself can't really control, because you don't have access to debug the back end in most cases. Some cases you can, but not all cases. So I would recommend starting out with an engine, learn programming, and make a few projects to learn the basic understanding of games, and learn how to distribute things. Get that all settled out first before trying to make the next big thing. And honestly, I've heard this from other tutorial guides, because I did eventually start watching tutorial guides and people talk about all these different things. Eventually, no, not eventually, but do not ever try to make the biggest game. Don't try to make the best project out there. And I'm not saying that to turn you down or to make you feel bad about yourself or say it's impossible. No. Once your goal is perfection rather than joy, the game no longer becomes unique. It just becomes another game that tries to be everything. Which, yes, it is possible to have a game that does everything, but by that point you're making an engine. You're not making a game. That's why I personally would always call Minecraft an engine instead of a game, because Minecraft's creative mode is pretty much make whatever you want in this limitation of this world. Roblox is an engine, just distributed as a platform of hundreds of thousands of games. So, when you want to start making the next big project, you don't want to think of it as a problem to solve. Instead, it's a project you want to enjoy, you want to make, something you want to build. Because once it's work instead of joy, you lose the joy, you lose the feel of excitement in it. And that's sort of one of the issues I've started coming across, because I finished off my year of trade school for computer repair and robotics, and I just got let go from an internship at a water treatment plant for IoT. And I told my dad, I was like, hey, I want to try and get into programming. I want to do computer science eventually. I want to learn all that. But I also want to try and make a little bit of a living off of making games. And he said, that's fine, but he won't let me live doing that forever if it doesn't work out. I was like, yeah, that's perfectly understandable. And so, starting to get into all of this, get serious about it all, I lost the joy of it, as I saw it as work rather than enjoyment. I saw it as a task to be done instead of something fun, a project to do, something to make. And it took a few, I hate to say, but mental breakdowns, where I tried combining creativity into making something that would sell. And yeah, it took me a while to realize that you can't see it as work if you want to make something enjoyable. Because then it becomes what every AAA studio becomes, just a cash grab by the end of it all. And it does a mental toll on you. It will. Especially if you're someone like me who sits there and thinks all the time about every single little thing. So you need to I'm sorry, I'm blinking out again. You need to be able to sit there and realize not every project is going to sell. Not every time you try putting on a platform is going to work out, because not every platform wants to accept your game. Not every time you could try saying to Google Play, hey, I want to put something on here, and they're going to just go, okay, yeah, let's do it. Pretty much the only time a platform will ever let you just throw something on there is like Game Jolt or Itch, and maybe Steam if you pay them, which that's another thing too. Sometimes when you want to distribute to a platform, you got to pay them first for a fee to get the developer account and all that there. But not everything's going to work out well, and in this modern world where everything runs off advertising, you can't make a game that, you know, isn't visually appealing, I guess is how you could put it. I mean, you can, but it's not going to grasp the attention of people without them already trying it first and saying, hey, wait, this is a fun concept. Because people, modern day people, and you gotta learn the psychology of people, is kind of what I'm getting to here. Is the reason you could put a video out for what a game will look like. It will show you what it will feel like, or it at least portrays it. That's also why a lot of gameplay footage cuts between different single things. It's not just one elongated playthrough, it cuts because it wants you to keep being excited. And we live in this modern world where our attention span is short. Our ability to sit there and watch something that doesn't always stay exciting becomes harder and harder. And we just crave constant dopamine, and that's what we expect to get out of a game. At least most times. Sometimes we want like a story or something else. You know, we expect different things from games, obviously. But in most cases, when you're trying to sell off a game, you can't just do screenshots, which is kind of what I did. I still gotta go back through and make videos for gameplay videos for all my different projects, but I really don't want to. That's sort of the part of trying to sell your game, is to make it appealing. And so you come to learn that making a game isn't just saying you want this and it's done, especially whenever you got to be the one to make all of it. I was fortunate enough to have a friend of mine do some music for a couple of my projects, but I was also fortunate to have some music that I made in the past that I could reuse now to add into my projects instead of having to make new soundtracks. But if you yourself are making every single bit of a game, you gotta learn how to make art, you gotta learn how to make animation, you gotta learn to program, you gotta learn the engine that you're using if you're not using a custom engine. And then if you use a custom engine, you have to be able to understand every bit and part of it. You have to know how to make music, how to understand sound effects, how to make everything work and flow correctly, and how all the logic needs to go into place just so something can play. And it's easier said than done, because then once you make the game, you gotta figure out where you can distribute it at, what it's going to cost to distribute it, if it's going to cost anything. then you gotta go, hey, how am I going to market it? How am I going to advertise it? You know, if you're someone like me who's entirely against advertising, you don't want to make a fucking advertisement anywhere for a game. So you don't fucking put the money into making an advertisement. Well, now, no one's ever going to see your game unless it's on the fucking sale, or they intentionally search up your game, or you make a fucking YouTube video about it. Which by then, you're fucking advertising it. So now, you gotta go, well, do I add a video? Do I add fucking GIFs? Do I add pictures? What kind of pictures do I add? What would best portray the game? You know, the cover art of it. Cover art tells a lot about the game sometimes, or you can make it as simple bullshit as what mine is anymore, and tells you pretty much fucking nothing about the game, and now you get off the whole trail of, well, I know what the cover art looks like, but I don't know anything else about it. And you start writing a description, and you have to try to put a description in there that would entice people to want to get into your game, to want to try it. And of course, the platforms that you decide to put your games on, some of them are so overly populated. The likelihood of anyone ever finding your game without it just sticking out is very unlikely. And that doesn't even come to the fact that if you want a game to just boom out of fucking random, it would require something called the YouTuber effect, where a fucking big stream YouTuber would play a game, and that game ends up being your game, and now you get free monetization, free advertisement for your game, because now everyone can see what your game is like. They can experience it by watching someone else, and if they like it enough, they would come buy it or download it or play it, whatever. So by the end of the day, it doesn't matter really how hard you try in making a project. It matters more on luck. And that fact, whenever you learn it, stings the hardest. Because, well, yes, the games I have published, the games I've made so far are small in comparison to the big projects I want to make by myself. They're not that big. They're used by a fucking engine that's all visual coding. It isn't actual coding. It's made off of a generic engine that's not my own custom engine. You know, it's not truly my perfect baby. It's just the clay sculpture of that perfect baby. It's the thing that I wanted to make, but I made it small enough to where I could finish it. Because there's a lot of projects I never finished, or I haven't even started on, because I know with the current engine that I use, I wouldn't be able to make the game that I want. Or it's just so big of a project, it would take me months and months to work on and make. Where, yeah, of course, I could sit there and make a game for months and months and months. But I'm not making money right now, and that's sort of my biggest issue is, of course, I need to go find me a job. But nowhere's fucking hiring. Any job that involves around game development expects you to have a fucking degree. Any like AI job expects you to have some form of computer science, or they have fucking AI engineer degrees now. You know, and any place that would hire me is like the most minimum wage bullshit job that I've already experienced once or twice before that I don't want to do again. Because I don't want a job that I wouldn't enjoy, but I know at one point or another I'm going to have to get one that I'm not going to like. And I'm happy enough to make that sacrifice. But in return, I wouldn't have all of this free time that I have now to start making a project. And I've started doing that a bunch. I've started spending a lot more time working on things, building things. But I've also spent a lot of time trying to think of what I could make that wouldn't consume a fucking year of work. You know, just trying to make. Because that's another issue, is you cannot overscope your project. You have to be able to sit there and think, oh yeah, this is how it's going to go. Oh fuck, this takes me 2 years to make. That's 2 years of your life you just spent making something that could never sell unless you're already well known. So if you want to get into indie game development and start making your own projects, just be wary. There are a lot of things you gotta sit there and consider. A lot of things you gotta sit there and realize that it's not as easy as what it seems. You're not gonna be... Everyone sees Scott Cawthon as a guy who made FNAF. They see, what's his name? The Notch, I can't remember his actual name, the guy that made Minecraft, the people that made Super Meat Boy, Stardew Valley, a few other games here and there. Those games took off really well. But they took a lot of time to make, and they took a lot of experience to make. Well, I think Stardew Valley was like his first project that just blew off, I think. Don't quote me on that, I could be wrong. But, you know, these people had to take their time, make so many projects so many times over, publish so many games, just for one to finally kick off and do well. And I watched a video on this the other day, which was saying pretty much the same thing that I was thinking. You are not the exception, and that's true for everyone. You're not gonna... Your first game you put out is going to be the biggest, best game ever. The first project you make is going to have mistakes, and it's going to have maybe a few bugs here and there, and that's fine. It's alright to fail. It's just you have to be able to consider that failing is inevitable. It's not something you can avoid. Success is a saying that's rarer than failure. And it takes a while to come to that realization that it's not going to work out as easy as what you may assume, because you spent your time hearing stories about these other people that lives a great life now because their games sold off well. Because that's not how that always works out to be. So my best advice for someone starting out is what I've covered in this video. You are not an exception. You should expect failure. But that shouldn't deter you from keep trying. It shouldn't be the reason that you decide not to pursue a dream. You can't let it be about money. You have to let it be about joy. And you have to start somewhere, even if you don't know anything. You have to learn. Eventually, you have to either learn by yourself by just trial and error, or watch a video, take a course, something that would allow you to be able to learn your own style, your own skill, your own self. And then, only then, you could create a project that you might be happy with, that might not sell, that might sell, but truly it's random. And so that's what you need to expect when starting out. I just wish I had known that ahead of time, that it's a lot easier said than done. So, and I mean, I myself, I'm not trying to make this into an advertisement here. This is the end of the video, by the way. You can click off if you want. I'm trying to have people view my games and try to download them. So if you would like to experience them, and for free, no cost to you, I will have a link in the description that will send you to my page on itch.io that would have all my current projects as free. So then you could sit there and hopefully enjoy them. And I would love to get some feedback on them. 'Cause that's what I want by the end of the day, is feedback, not necessarily profits. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching.